I'd like to call this a special meeting of council to order. This is a public hearing, and we'll begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we are privileged to share the land with them. Just a few opening comments. Tonight we will be dealing with the municipal planning strategy and the associated bylaws. We have been working on this project since, 2020, but this council since March of 2025. It has been a long process, and tonight we are down to having what we think are final documents. But we want to assure everyone that if there are questions that can be answered, our planners are here tonight, and so clarification, if you need clarification on things, we can accommodate that as well. But tonight we will go through the public hearing process, which is part of the process we follow as a municipal council when we bring in new bylaws. And that means that there's a legal process that we must follow. So that will be the structure we'll follow, and there's an opportunity for public input in that. And then we will close the hearing and then move to a council meeting where we will discuss what we've heard and decide whether we're going to make a decision tonight or not. So with that, I hope that's enough information to get started, to recognize that the first half hour or so of this, or as long as it's necessary, we will have the formal public hearing. So with that, we do need to have councillors record that they're here. If they're not present, they are not able to vote during the council meeting that will follow. So if we could start with Councillor Reinhardt, just so we have names on the record, please.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Councillor Martin Bell, District 2.
Councillor Wendy Oiko, District 3.
Councillor Pam Hubley, District 4.
Councillor Kathy Moore, District 5.
Mayor Elspeth McLean-Weil.
Councillor Allison Smith, District 6.
Councillor Edgar Burns, District 7.
Deputy Mayor Chastity Vino, Councillor District 10, and Acting Councillor District 9.
Thank you. So this, as I've said, is a public hearing at which time Municipal Council will receive both written and verbal presentations from citizens in attendance concerning the municipal-wide land use project, specifically the repeal and replacement of the Municipal Planning Strategy 035 and corresponding land use bylaw. The purpose of this public hearing is for council to receive public comments, both written and verbal, concerning draft 4 of the proposed municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. The hearing agenda is as follows. There'll be a staff presentation on the proposed planning documents. There'll be written and verbal presentations from the public. We have received some written presentations, and we will receive any verbal presentations people wish to make. And then there'll be a review of the next steps in the process, and then we will declare the public hearing closed. If there are any verbal presentations that are to be made to council, I would ask that the persons who wish to speak at this public hearing to note the following: to state your name and your address, that you direct your comments and statements to the chair, and that you limit your presentations to 10 minutes. Speakers can address council twice, but before they speak for a second time, speakers will be requested to wait until all other citizens have had the opportunity to speak. Planning staff will present further details in terms of the specific changes that are being proposed from the other drafts that have been circulated. So with that, I would now ask staff to make a brief presentation on the proposed planning documents, and I'm not sure who is leading that. Rosemary, thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, councillors, and members of the public. My name is Rosemary Young, and I am a Planner 1 with the Municipality of the District of Lunenburg. I'm joined by my colleagues Jeff Merrill, Director of Planning and Development Services, Ella Gindi, Planner 2, Emma McDonald, Planner 1, and Ezra Saunders, Planning Student. Tonight we'll discuss the background of the project, what's changed between Draft 3 and Draft 4, and then we'll provide an overview of the Draft 4 as a whole and touch on next steps. Moving into the background, this project began in response to provincial legislative requirements. In 2018, the province required all municipalities in Nova Scotia to adopt planning documents and zoning for all lands within their boundaries. These documents must address the statements of provincial interest and the minimum planning requirements established by the province. As a result, a municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw are being proposed. If adopted, these documents will guide for future growth and development and can be amended over time as community needs and priorities evolve. So where are we in the process? This project has been ongoing since 2020, with lots of public engagement throughout. It has included the creation of 4 drafts of the planning documents, which have evolved over time based on feedback from the public, council, the Planning Advisory Committee, stakeholders, and staff. Council passed first reading of Draft 3 of the planning documents on June 9, 2026. Following a public hearing on June 25, 2026, Council directed planning staff to revisit and revise Draft 3 of the Land Use Planning Framework. Specifically, Council directed staff to revise the agricultural framework and the definition of a recreational vehicle. Then, Council passed first reading of Draft 4 of the planning documents on July 14, 2026. A public information session was held on July 21st with 5 attendees. And that brings us to today's public hearing. So as mentioned, there have been 4 drafts of the planning documents, and there has been public engagement at each phase of the project. Throughout the project, we've reached residents through a wide range of platforms and events. We ran radio ads, newspaper ads, and shared regular updates on social media. We also put notices on the tax bills. And to broaden awareness, postcards were mailed to households throughout the municipality, all directing residents to the Engage Modal website. Since March 2025, that page has received over 36,000 visits. However, in total, since the project's inception, the Engage page has been visited approximately 42,000 times. We've also posted at least 94 documents to Engage Modal to ensure that each phase of the project is well documented and accessible to the public. All presentations to Council are available on our YouTube page as well. Project updates and participation opportunities were also promoted through our Municipal Matters, Spring and Summer editions, the monthly District Digest, and Engage Modal newsletters, providing residents with ongoing opportunities to stay informed and share feedback throughout the process. Since March 2025, we have hosted 32 engagement events in total, including 28 open houses and information sessions that attracted at least 1,049 in-person attendees, as well as 4 online information sessions. In addition, we held 4 stakeholder meetings and conducted outreach at the South Shore Expo, New Germany Community Cafe, and through Forum Farm visits.
Now we want to highlight the major changes between Draft 3 and Draft 4 of the planning documents. So in Draft 4, the proposed agricultural protection area replaces the rural agricultural potential zone that appeared in previous drafts. This change was made for several reasons, and we'll give you a brief overview of why that is the case. In the previous zone, a property owner who wished to remove their land from the zone would be required to complete a full rezoning process. This is a costly process that takes many months to complete. It would also require the property owner to hire a qualified professional to undertake a soil study demonstrating the absence of Class 3 soils. There is a shortage of qualified professionals able to do these types of studies in the region. For example, Kings County had a similar issue and ended up removing the policy due to a shortage of qualified professionals able to conduct that type of study. The whole process would put a large burden on the property owner. Another challenge is that the province requires us to use the Canada Lands Inventory soil map, which is mapped at a 1 to 250,000 scale, meaning that 1 centimeter on the map is 2.5 kilometers on the ground. This map alone was used to determine where the rural agricultural potential zone was applied in previous drafts, and this resulted in inconsistencies at the property level. To address these concerns, Council directed staff to replace the Rural Agricultural Potential Zone with the Agricultural Protection Area in Draft 4 of the documents. The intent remains to protect farmland in the municipality containing Class 3 soils, but with a more flexible and targeted approach. Rather than applying it to the entire property, the Agricultural Protection Area only applies to the portion of the property that is active farmland containing Class 3 soils. Within the Agricultural Protection Area, subdivision is limited to a maximum of 6 lots in the portion of the property that is within the Agricultural Protection Area. All uses permitted in the underlying zone remain permitted with the exception of cluster developments, which are prohibited in the Agricultural Protection Area, and this is consistent with the previous zone. The Agricultural Protection Area also regulates the removal of topsoil, which is unlike the previous zone. The documents recognize that the provincial mapping is not always completely accurate at the individual property level. For that reason, the Agricultural Protection Area has been designed to allow property owners to request that their property is added or removed from the area. The proposed municipal planning strategy includes a policy that allows property owners to request the removal of their property from the Agricultural Protection Area by demonstrating that the farm was inactive prior to the adoption of the bylaw, or by demonstrating that the property can be partially or fully serviced by municipal water and or sewer services. For example, if you have a section of your property that is within the Agricultural Protection Area, but you know it hasn't been farmed, you can come to us and request that the restriction be removed. Similarly, property owners may request to have their lands added to the Agricultural Protection Area if they don't, or if they contain active agricultural uses, even if they don't meet all of the criteria. For example, if you have a livestock operation and the Agricultural Protection Area doesn't apply to your property, but you want to protect that area, you can still do that. This is unlike the former Rural Agricultural Potential Zone, where adding agricultural lands to the zone was not possible unless it was proved to be Class 3 soils and approved by council. This approach protects active farmland in the municipality while providing flexibility for property owners. Rather than relying on fixed mapping that may not always reflect the conditions on the ground, it allows the Agricultural Protection Area to evolve over time and ensure that the property owners have the choice to protect their agricultural lands. In Draft 4, we also adjusted the definition of a recreational vehicle to make it more plain language, ensuring that it is clear that the definition includes older models of recreational vehicles.
So now we'll shift to providing you with an overarching picture of the regulations as a whole. There are 8 zones in total. The rural zones aim to protect rural character. The environmental and recreation zones are intended to protect water and ecosystems in MODL. And the mixed-use service zone is intended to support the continuation and growth of a denser mixed development pattern in areas near Cookville and Osprey Village. In addition to the zoning framework, there are a number of general provisions in the land use bylaw that may apply to residents. For example, there is a 20-meter horizontal setback from inland watercourses and wetlands, and habitation of an RV is permitted for more than 180 days with a permit. So moving on to next steps. Here's a snapshot of where we are in the process. Following tonight's public hearing, there may be a second reading, and provincial approval would be the final steps. Thank you for attending tonight's public hearing. You're welcome to visit our project page by scanning the QR code or going to engagemodl.ca.
Thank you, Rosemary. And we will go to Ella for another one of our municipal planners for written submissions that we've received.
Thank you, Mayor. Planning staff have received 7 correspondences, mostly in relation to the agricultural protection area. We also received 2 late submissions that are not part of the agenda package, but will be added to the minutes at the end of this public hearing.
At this point, I will ask if there are people who wish to make presentations to the hearing this evening. If you just want to raise your hand to speak. Okay, so we have 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, I see. Maybe 5. Better put them up again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. There's no preference in who speaks first. Just whoever would like to come forward, please do. Can we take questions? Do I go there? Sure.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Chiquan. You mentioned I have to say my address. I'll be living at 100 Elm Street in Bridgewater very soon. I'm here for the year from the Yukon, but I purchased property in Cherry Hill, and I have a wetland area on my property. And my main concern, I will be meeting with Rosemary tomorrow, but my main concern is what is the actual distribution of the wetland? And I know that the province is the one that decided, but like how long ago did they survey the wetlands and how old is that data? That's my question. I don't know if anyone can answer that.
That will be a question Rosemary can answer. There are provisions within our coastal protection regulations around wetlands, and so some of that is already set out, and some is also under the management of the province. So, yeah.
Yeah. My concern, like I have a background in biology, I have no interest in developing the wet area of my property. It's just more the accuracy and making sure that I'm outside of that buffer zone. Am I supposed to, I know probably I'll get these answers tomorrow too, but am I supposed to just rely on the ArcGIS map to make sure I'm outside of the buffer zone? And is it on me financially to get a professional to come out and assess the wetland area and what its actual distribution is?
Some of those wetlands are identified, and so I don't know if one of the planners wish to kind of, in succinct form, maybe address how we handled wetlands within our coastal protection and how they're handled within our current bylaw plan.
Thank you, Mayor. They're both dealt similarly, just different setback requirements. And the all wetlands, we are using a provincial data layer that we received from the province in regarding to wetlands of special significance and wetlands that are meeting a certain threshold. What you see, and we are aware that there are some inaccuracies with the mapping, it's stated in our bylaw. Technically, from coastal wetlands, you'll have to meet 30-meter setback. From inland wetlands, it's 20 meters. And again, that can be assessed in terms of where your house is located, where you want to build on the house. A surveyor can let us know the distance that you need to meet from the actual wetland. However, if you believe, which just from hearing from you, it sounds like you do have a wet area in your property, but theoretically, if you did not have a wet area in your property or you think it's far smaller than that, there's always a chance to either get Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change to send someone into your property or to hire a qualified person to delineate that wetland. If the wetland does not exist, we'll remove that restriction from your property, or the setback will, we will not reduce it, but we will reduce it if, for example, if it's an inland wetland and your lot is undersized in the sense that you will not be able to place a septic, a well, and a house due to the setback that we are requiring because of the existence of the wetland, we will reduce that setback for you to a minimum of 7 meters from the wetland. So you'll still be able to develop on that land.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it'll be important, and for the people that may be in the audience that may want to ask specific questions, I'm not trying to cut you off, but this is an opportunity to present information to us, And we'd like to kind of restrict it to that. So I hope that that provided you with something. And you also have a meeting set up. So
Yes.
you can, anyone in the gallery that wants to have a specific discussion about their property, our planners are more than happy to do that and go through any of the information that would be necessary for whatever your plans are. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Who would like to come next? Sure.
Good evening. My name is Stephen O'Leary.
Yeah, we're going to just get that podium raised. It's important that we get a good mic because this is broadcast as well, and we want everyone to hear what you have to say.
It's okay. Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Stephen O'Leary. I'm the president of Water's Edge Leisure Living and also Spectacle Lakeland Holdings and Wave Property Developments. And my partners and I have developed a lot of waterfront property around the province, but in Lunenburg County particularly. It's been our home base for the past 15 years. We've done multiple developments. I very much apologize for being sort of late to this party. I only learned about this a couple of days ago when I had a client cancel a purchase of a lakefront property because they were told they had to be 30 meters back from the water in order to build. And in this particular lot, that doesn't really make sense. So I called yesterday and spoke with Norma and spoke with Ella and got a little bit of background on what it is and why. It still doesn't make sense, and I guess my point really is that I think that in the draft of legislation, you should give some more consideration to making exceptions. I was told there is no exception for me because my lot is 2.5 acres, not undersized, which means that I'm being punished, or my clients are being punished for us having been more conscientious and designed larger lots. If we would have designed a smaller lot, we would have been able to get an exemption from 30 meters to, I understand, 7. And I guess I have a number of thoughts. First of all, that, I understand the idea of trying to protect waterways and so on. And that certainly makes sense. And we try to do that anyway. We design lots that are larger. Our lots we've never designed a minimum sized lot. They've always been 1.5 acres to 2 acres and often larger. In this particular case, I'll describe the lot. At the street, it's very steep. It goes down into a ravine that has seasonal water runoff that runs through it into a bit of a swamp and then into the lake. It cuts across through this lot, and the build site for this lot is more or less at the water, or closer to the water. There's plenty of room there to build based on the old rules, which is what the lot was designed under. With the original rules where you could build to the water's edge, which we've never built anything to the water's edge, but that's where that on this lot is where the best build site is. It's really the only build site. We designed our lot specifically to accommodate a good build site like we do with every lot. In this particular case, the build site is close to the water. Otherwise, you're in the ravine or you're on a steep embankment. When I spoke with Ella, she said, unfortunately, because you're not an undersized lot, we can't make any exceptions for you. With the ravine, fill it in. Well, it's probably $50,000 or $60,000 worth of fill that I would have to dump in there, which doesn't make sense. Also, that fills in a spot that takes seasonal runoff, so it's more likely to wash dirt into the lake than anything else. Or build my house on stilts on the side of this embankment, and that doesn't really make sense either. And my point is really, it's not a complaint about Ella or necessarily even about the rule. My complaint is that there's not an exception process unless it's an undersized lot. So undersized lot could be 7 meters. My neighbor is built within 10 meters of the water. And I guess the other thing is if you build a house that's 30 meters from the water, which I'm not saying 30 meters is the wrong measurement in many cases, it can be accommodated. If I build my house at 30 meters from the water, it's a lakefront property, I still want my view of the lake, so I'm going to cut the trees from 30 meters, I'm going to cut 30 meters of trees rather than 20 meters of trees or 10 meters of trees, and I'm still going to put a dock in there, I'm still going to put my boat in there and ride my jet ski around, and if I don't want to walk all the way back up to the house, maybe I'm going to pee in the lake. It's not going to change. Those things are all exactly the same. I'm going to have 30 meters of grass instead of 10 or 20. And so I don't understand the arbitrariness of a 30-meter setback for my house in this particular area, which I believe is because it's a watershed overlay. It's not the actual watershed zone. It's just some other lakes that eventually feed into that, which is probably, I would say, a mile of transmission before it even gets to the watershed. So I would ask that you consider I think I understand the objective of not wanting people to build close to the water. That's fine. But I would suggest that you incorporate a provision that would allow for exceptions based on circumstance. And that could be, provided by, our engineer could design a system to make sure that, runoff is not going into the lake or whatever the concerns are. So long as we can prove that that will work on this lot, and maybe that the lot has some special circumstance that makes it applicable to apply the exception, other than it's too small a lot. So if you think about a lot that's too small, it's too small to accommodate a well and a septic and a house based on the provisions. So now we're going to that poor person can't build on that lot, so we're going to go from 30 meters to 7 meters. Well, in our case, we're asking to go to maybe 10 or 20 meters, still a safe distance, way more than what was done previously in that same lot or same area. And I guess the other thing is that you might consider that lots that were created under the rules that were in place when the lot was created should perhaps be the rule that applies. Maybe there's some additional requirements to prove that it's safe or whatever, as we spoke about before. But we spend a lot of time and a lot of money with our surveyors to make sure our lots are designed so that there are good build sites, and there isn't, they're based on the rules that are in place when we design them. But to then, after we've already done that, to say, okay, now there's new rules, and it makes, for example, with this lot, and we don't have probably that many that are affected by this, but in this particular case, it makes the lot from being a valuable waterfront lot to being almost no value, because the cost to develop on this lot, according to what I'm being told is the way to achieve it under the current proposed rule, would cost as much or more than the lot itself. And it just means it's a write-off for us, and it's not really fair, I don't think. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for the consideration, and hope you'll...
Thank you, Mr. O'Leary. Who would like to come next? Okay, Mark. We're going.
Hi, I'm the other half of that team. Mark Hoadley's my name. I'm also with Water's Edge and Spectacle Lake Land Holdings. The first thing I want to say is I've been to several of the council meetings, and I am a proponent of the changes, of some of the changes, a lot of the changes you are putting in place. I think having a community or a municipality with no, governing factors or no, plan in place is the wrong thing. But in saying that, you know, some of the things that are now we're looking at doing, there's some gray areas, and as a developer, communities start with development, and that's, I'm not saying that for my behalf, but I mean, for us in general, developers in general. And I've talked about this before in other meetings, there's still some gray area and there's too many open-ended areas in the process right now for even starting the development process. Our due diligence period is impacted greatly by new restrictions that are put in and new things hoops we have to jump through, like water testing and stuff like that. It's really hard to come up to purchase a property from somebody and then say to them, look, I have to do water tests on your property. And by the way, if they fail, and I don't buy the property, probably chances are nobody else is going to buy it either. So there's some little bit of gray area in there that I think we should still work out. But talking to what Stephen talked about earlier, specifically on a property, I'm not so focused on one property in particular. My problem with the new regulations with the 20-meter setbacks and the 30-meter setbacks, if in existing communities, we've done our due diligence when we purchase properties and we develop properties with the zoning that we are, you know, we're following. And we developed, you approved, we had certain guidelines to follow. And now, all of a sudden, we have sold properties to people all over the place, not just us, other developers around, and they bought properties for retirement. They bought properties for family legacies that they knew they could do. So now we have communities built that have properties built 10 meters from the water, maybe 20 meters from the water. Now we're going back and saying, now you have to be 30 meters from the water. So these people that have found these great retirements, and maybe a lot like Stephen says, is sloped at the first and lower at the bottom. Specifically, you should build at the bottom, or, you know, makes more sense to build at the bottom. If you can't, you have now your view plane to your lake and your surroundings are now blocked by the people that were afforded the luxury of building out closer to the lake with better viewpoints and stuff. So I think generally just swooping across the board and saying everything has to follow the new guidelines, I don't think that's really fair to the people that did their due diligence, worked with the community, worked with the municipalities to plan our communities, and now for existing communities, you're changing the regulations and all the rules for the existing ones. I'm a huge proponent if you come back and say anything newly developed is going to be subject to these guidelines. That's fantastic. We know what the rules are, and everybody in that community is going to be faced with the same rules. But to have a mix of 90% of old rules, and now you're inflicting the new rules on 10% of the leftover people because they were using it as a retirement home or a legacy for their family and stuff. I think that's a hard pill for people to swallow. And what happens to the lots that now, because of the new guidelines, are redundant lots? Somebody's planned to save that lot for the retirement home, and all of a sudden now they can't even build on it, because if you have a 30-meter setback in these areas, and only the first, you know, and the lot's only 100, you know, is only 40 meters deep, but it's unfortunate enough to be 200 meters wide, and there's no provisions in your new rules that will allow for them to build, that's a real problem. And that's highly unfair to do that to developers and property owners. Because now we have to take the message back to our communities that we're trying to build and trying to increase the housing and the density in MODL and say, we're really, really sorry, but in good faith, we told you where you were and we gave you all the requirements, but now the rules have changed. So your future, the plan you made for the future is no longer exist, because the lot you have is no longer any value at all. And by not having exemptions or working with engineers and, you know, environmental people to say, no, we can come up with a plan. There's a good drainage plan we can place to make sure that you don't have runoff from that house that's within the buffer zone or the allowable zone. But just to come back and say, nope, it's not going to happen unless your lot is undersized, that really should be revisited in order to make that fair to the public in us trying to resolve the housing problems that we have. And, I mean, let's face it, we put a lot of money invested. We invest a lot of money in the municipalities by building our own roads and our own infrastructure to your guidelines and selling land. You're collecting property taxes and stuff, so we're not doing anything but enhancing the community by doing what we're doing. So to change the rules on us midstream or after the fact, that really should be revisited. And I guess my question in all this is, how do we end up with draft 4 of something that's not quite finalized yet, but yet a portion of it now has been applied before the whole thing has been approved. How do we get to that stage? And I don't know how that happens. I guess it's a process that I don't understand. Like, we're sending it back to be approved and we're revising it all, but okay, we're going to cherry pick out of it and we're going to say this applies. I don't know if I don't know how that works. If somebody has an explanation, I'd appreciate that, but I really don't understand it.
Did you have more? Because we can have the planners outline that process that we do follow. It is a legislative process that we're required to follow once those drafts are past first reading. So, I don't know, Mr. Merrill, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. So the Municipal Government Act sets out how council can adopt planning documents such as these. And part of the process is they need to conduct first reading. And when that notice of first reading is published, anything like the development officer can't approve anything unless it satisfies anything that's in place or the proposed documents for 150 days. So if council decides not to approve it, after 150 days, that first reading goes away. But within that 150 days, council can do second reading, but before they do second reading, they have to do a public hearing. So that's where we're at tonight. So council has previously done first reading on draft 4 and has given notice of a public hearing. And after the close of today's public hearing, if council deems it advisable, they can either approve the document or they can defeat the document. If they did defeat it, we did a public hearing on draft 3 and council defeated that. So that there was a window where that document was in place and then it went away. And until council gave notice of their first reading on draft 4, then this draft is in place. And that's following the rules of the Municipal Government Act for how municipalities approve planning documents.
Okay, and excuse me, I think I missed my question was, so what you're saying is that you can, after each reading, you can approve a certain portion of the draft, the entire draft?
The entire draft.
It has to be the entire draft approved. So how did we get the overlay of the wetland areas around the watershed area approved?
Because first reading passed. So from first reading, technically it's in effect until second reading. If second reading passes today, if that's what council deems advisable, it's adopted and then it has to go to the province for final approval.
Right.
So from first reading, technically the regulations are in effect.
They're in effect?
Yeah.
Even though the province hasn't approved them yet, or?
It hasn't passed second reading and has to go to the province.
Right. So it's irreversible right now at the point it's now passed that the overlay wetland areas is.
No, council needs to pass second reading. If they won't pass second reading
So-
today.
That's tonight. That's what we're doing tonight.
Oh,
So when we close the hearing tonight, council will have a full discussion of whether we're supportive of the draft as it stands now, or whether we want to make further changes of it.
So when we were told, or our clients were told that there is no way there's a variance in there, is that the way it stands today, or is there an actual chance that the council can come back and say, no, we're going to waive that, or we're not going to apply that? Am I missing something here? Or?
It's up to council to decide today whether they're going to pass second reading or
We were
not.
told, the client was told there was no chance, so they avoided the deal with us, terminated the contract because they were told there was no variance.
The way the legislation is written right now, there's no variance with where they are located, where the property is located.
If we don't approve it tonight, then we're going back to start the process again.
Right. So,
We go to first reading again, we'd we go back to staff and say, these are the changes that or come back to us with some proposed changes, and then we go back to draft 1,
okay,
okay?
okay.
So everyone is welcome to stay for the discussion and to hear what council decides to do tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. That's really it for me. Thank you very much. for your
Thank
time.
you.
Great.
Who would like to be next? Sure.
Hi, my name is Diana Gilbert, and I come from Midville Branch. And my question,
Speak up a little bit. We all want to hear what you have to say, so.
I was afraid of that, okay. My question concerns the groundwater available for people in this province. When you have permission to put in a development or build a house, you have to have water. I would like to know, first of all, what your information is on the available groundwater in Lunenburg County.
Well, if you're building a property, the regulations around water and wells is a provincial government regulation that's followed.
Do you know what it is?
I can't answer that.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I read recently that of 21 of the world's largest aquifers, 15 are seriously depleted. And that was in 2015. And I don't really, I mean, that's probably large population areas. But I think the message is that our aquifers are vulnerable to development. And we need to know what we've got before we do any development, really. The idea that we might have another 1 million people in this province by 2050, was it? Where do we get our water from? Do we know? I don't see any regulations concerning availability of water for people who are developing.
So within and I'd ask Ella maybe, or one of the planners to speak to the size of development and then the requirements that are required in the development permit around water.
Thank you.
Before that, I would like to just give a bit of a background. In Lunenburg County, in comparison to maybe other regions in the province, we do not have aquifers. We do not have large aquifers that feed in our population. It's a fractured bedrock, so it means there are small pockets of water. Hence, most water that is being consumed is through wells or through important protected watershed areas like the Heb-Melipsiget and Minimkik watershed area, or other watersheds, or 2 other watersheds that we have in our municipality, like Dares Lake and Oakland. Currently, because the regulations are in effect, so there's a bit more oversight in terms of how regulations can be done and us being able to require water studies. Right now, what the type of developments that we are requiring water studies are for larger scale cluster developments. So usually 10 units and up would require a water study of a certain level, and then more than that will require a level 2 water study. So that's when we want to assess with those water studies what is the level of water available in the area to be able to sustain a larger scale development.
And you have to do that before you get planning permission?
It's part of the planning process to be able to get a final approval, and that's through a development agreement. However, when it comes to a standard development of just building a house or 2 houses on a lot, that's under provincial legislation, when we're just getting a letter from the province saying that they were approved a well or a septic. So that goes hand in hand together.
Okay. So your power in this area is limited, really?
In certain cases, yes, but that's where this document comes into effect that allows to at least oversee larger scale developments and ensure that it does not disperse nearby properties from water.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that our well is one certain depth. Other wells in the area seem to get deeper to get the water, which indicates that it may be finite. And if you have a finite water supply, you should have a finite development. Anyway, I think that's probably answered my questions, but I just want you to recognize that some people are very concerned, and it's not just me, very concerned about water supply in this province, but particularly in this township. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. We certainly are very aware of the water issues. The drought of last year brought water to, I think, everyone's attention, and there's a high degree of sensitivity around how development affects other people's water supply, and we've had a big conversation about that just recently at council, and thinking about what we do about a community well and how it might affect where we might locate that, because how it might affect other people's water supplies. So it is very much on our minds. Are there other people who wish to speak? Yes, please.
Hi, thank you. Faye Pickram from Lunenburg. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's great just to hear the questions and hear the discussion. I'd like to, and if this is the wrong place, please direct me, but I would like to understand a little bit more about what's happening around engineered roads and whether or not this is related to the land use bylaw.
No, that isn't part of the land use bylaw, and if you want to hang around, we can probably have somebody help answer those questions.
Great.
Or if you want to leave information, your address, we're happy to phone you about that to provide more information, but that's not the discussion tonight.
Okay. And the other one is around forested land, if there are any provisions that will be changing around for land that's heavily forested.
Again, anything that has to do with forested areas or forestry uses are not under municipal regulations, are under provincial legislation.
Okay, so private woodlots or private land that's forested, or
They remain unchanged unless a property owner wants to do something in that land, but in regards to forestry uses, that's under provincial regulations.
okay, thank you. I won't take more of your time.
Anyone else? Mrs. Gibson. Hester.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Hester Gibson. I live on 3372 Northfield Road. I attended the previous meeting quite unaware of the changes between Draft 3 and Draft 4. And as a trained researcher, the first question you always ask are, what are the definitions? And I was shocked at the definition of farmland and agriculture, how it changed from Draft 3 to Draft 4. I understand the changes because of trying to simplify with the soil types. I get that. But going to a database where the farms listed were the ones registered with the province in 2018 doesn't even come close to covering the protection of the farmland in Lunenburg County. The data shown there were 4 farms of more than 50 acres in the municipality, which I was gobsmacked because historically there are 4 more than that. And in fact, the original blocks were all 100-acre blocks. There were no fields when our ancestors came here. They cleared the forest through hard work. And I truly question the definition of farmland and the database used. You can go back into historical data and find farms that require protection. You can do all sorts of things. And by the way, I would like to congratulate you all on that. This has been a long, difficult journey. I was to that first meeting in New Germany, and it was like, whoa. So you've come a long way. This is totally awesome. But I do seriously question that database as a definition of farmland. That is truly the point I really want to drive home. I also want you to think about, I'm going to go in, and I apologize to the First Nations people if I mispronounce this, but Haudenosaunee, the Confederacy, have a 7 generations principle where nothing is decided until you consider 7 generations away. And I know that people need a place to live. I know that we need to develop land, which I have another word for it, but I'll be nice, and I respect the people here. And yes, people need homes, and yes, people need places to live. But we really have to be careful with less than 4%, just a minute, I have the data here. 3.2% of Canadian land can be used to grow crops, and only 2.2% can be pasture land. The municipality of Lunenburg County is blessed with a great deal of that. And I just would hate to see it disappear so that my I'm rising up in the world. My great-great-great-grandchildren not be able to look back and say, what were they thinking? So my point is, I really want you to think about the protection of farmland. I seriously question the definition of farmland in that draft. And I want to close with, my great-grandfather, Jacob Francis Penny, was a municipal councillor of maple tree fame in New Germany. They're still there, all those maple trees. And he was known as Whistling Jake because he whistled as he worked and walked. And he wrote a letter just before he died, and I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest condensed version, and it's very brief. And now a word of advice to those who will reap the benefits of the 60 years of honest toil and care of my good wife and myself. My advice to all of you is to take a keen interest in everything that will make the community in which you reside a better place in which to live. Everything that pertains to the welfare of this final county of Lunenburg, in which I have always been interested in her development, try to make her the best county in Nova Scotia to reside. He wrote that in 1938, just before he died. So, I know that everyone in this room truly wants to make this a better place to live. And I think a few tweaks might make that work for future generations. Thank you very much for your time, and I know this has been a long, hard, and arduous process, especially for these people here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Hester. I appreciate the history from your ancestors. That's a very interesting way to end the comment. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? I need to ask that 3 times. It's all part of the process. Sorry? Oh, okay. Mr. O'Leary, you can speak twice.
Oh, this is so much fun. Thank you again. Just one last point. I won't be but a minute. I have questions about the dotted line that outlines the watershed feeder area. One, I have a development on St. George's Lake, for example, which is a small lake, spring-fed, not fed by streams, and it's miles from the watershed area, and the only outflow from it is a very small culvert through the road. It's definitely not a feeder to the watershed area. So I would suggest that's a little bit of an overreach, trying to grab other things. If they're watershed, make them watershed. If they're not, then leave them alone. But that 30-meter setback doesn't really impact the lots that I have there in any significant way. It won't make any difference for me on that development. But it really isn't what it's purported to be in your map. And I'd ask that be reconsidered. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. And I'll just comment on the watershed areas. There was originally a defined watershed area, and then now we have an extension of that watershed area, which was defined more by more accurate and precise determination by, I'm not sure who did that. It wasn't us, but Ella can speak to it, that now has extended that watershed area to a much, much larger area than which was originally developed when that watershed area was determined however many years ago. I don't know if you want to put a time frame on those changes. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, for that question. So we have 3 protected watershed areas in our municipality. One is the larger watershed area, which is Heb-Melipsigit and Minimkik Lake watershed, which we like to call it the Petit Riviere watershed. Another one is Dares Lake and Oakland Lake. When the province in around the 1960s, 1970s delineated the area surrounding those watershed and decided what is the prescribed protected watershed area, it was done with ground truthing. It was done with some aerial imaging that they had in the past. So a bit more outdated way of going and looking for an actual understanding the area of what feeds into those lakes to actually be considered as a protected watershed area. And around 2015, 2016, we purchased a LiDAR package that is basically done on a GIS. And that type of system is very accurate. It's the most up-to-date data that municipalities can use or mappers can use to map areas, specifically watershed areas or waterways and other environmental features located in an area that they want to look and see what's going on here. So we've been using that LiDAR. I will try to find the most, plain language to use to explain it, but it's basically a technology, laser that with it's very accurate, and we could actually map the actual size of the watershed. So what we were able to do with that type of data, with that type of laser, is to map the actual natural watershed boundary, which is also used by the Bridgewater Service Commission and and for other areas as well. So Town of Lunenburg uses our actual natural watershed boundary for Dares Lake as well. So we actually created that mapping, but it's a very accurate level of mapping because it's using the most updated technology out there, that with laser and infrared looking at which lakes or underground streams are feeding into those larger lakes. So yes, maybe a small development might not, just by being there as a house is not going to completely deter or affect the quality of the water. But what if something severely happens there? What if the gas tanks explodes or something else happens that infiltrate into those water streams that eventually gets into the lake? That's where the 30-meter comes through. So the 30-meter setback helps to filter 50% of phosphorus and other contaminants that can go through runoff and sedimentation into water bodies.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to council tonight? Is there anyone else that would like to speak tonight? And last call, as a third and final time, if there are any members of the public that wish to speak on the amendments to come forward, now is the last call. Yes, please. We just ask that you introduce yourself and your civic address.
Hi, my name is Rachel. We are in Bayport at 2378 Highway 332. I realize the commercial development concerns have been raised with regard to developers building lands or mapping out building plots based on previous rules. The same thing applies, the same concerns apply to people like myself as individual property owners who kind of owned that land for 20-some years already. Septic's in, wells in, all the rules were followed. Variances were made. Changes were made. on where those things could go at our expense, not at civic expense. And now to look at having, like you say, all those things wiped out. If you happen to have a piece of property that's surrounded by water, so you can't pick a different site to build. You have to have your septic so far from this, so far from that. We've met all those conditions. But as far as no exceptions, when 20 years ago we met all the criteria but have not finished all the building for reasons which I wouldn't disclose, but you're talking about private people, not corporations that have profits. We all know what's happened to the cost of building here everywhere. And it's not public money that we're spending, it's ours. So again, just on a private ownership basis, to have no exceptions, I would just raise that concern. That's all.
Okay, thank you. And I didn't get your last name, I'm sorry.
Fallman.
Fallman?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Mark?
Just one closing statement is all I'd like to make there. And I guess just to summarize what I said earlier, and again, I do appreciate
Make sure you're at the mic before you
I do
speak.
appreciate everything you guys are doing and all the, and the changes that are currently happening, and I support them. I really do. I just really I would like council to consider history and where we are and what we've all gone through for the developments we currently have and the lots we currently own, the homes we currently have. Like, I believe in new rules for new development, 100%. But I think you should really have a revisit to have exception for existing properties that were approved based on the requirements of today, not what's coming tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Yes.
Hi again. I would also just like to, hearing the discussion tonight, to reiterate that to reiterate that it does seem that it would be appropriate to have some grandfathering in certain situations, private individuals, where money has been invested and so on. So I would just like to add my voice to that discussion around making space for people who have plans that maybe haven't quite come to fruition yet, but that they don't necessarily have to reinvest completely. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? And finally, is there anyone who wishes to speak? With hearing nothing more, I declare that I'll just give a little outline of what happens next. I think the planners have already done that. But we will close the hearing, and then it will be open for council to have a fulsome discussion on what has been presented tonight, but also what they've thought about or heard from their residents since we've put out draft 4 of the document. So with that, I will declare the hearing closed, and we will move into our council meeting.